All right, have you ever stood in front of a massive skyscraper or walked through a huge shopping mall and just thought to yourself, how in the world do you even figure out what this thing is worth? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most powerful tools for doing just that, the discounted cash flow method.
It all kicks off with this massive challenge, what I kind of like to call the billion peso question.
No, seriously, think about it. Valuing a simple little rental house with one stable tenant, that's one thing. But what about a giant office building with dozens of different leases, all ending at different times? Or a shopping mall where your income literally depends on how well the stores are doing? Their futures aren't a straight line. They're all over the place.
You see, for those simple, steady properties, a much easier method called direct capitalization works just fine. It's like taking a quick snapshot of 1 year's income. But for these really complex assets, you need something way more powerful. Their income isn't a snapshot, it's a full-length movie with twists and turns, and that's exactly where DCF comes into play.
So, here's our roadmap for tackling this question. We'll start with the basic recipe for DCF. Then we'll get into the fun part, forecasting a property's future. After that, we got to deal with the tricky concepts of time and risk. And finally, we'll put the whole thing together, see the final math, and figure out when this super powerful tool is actually the right one for the job.
So let's dive into the solution itself, the discounted cash flow method, or as everyone calls it, DCF.
You know, at its heart, DCF is basically a financial time machine. It's all about looking into the future, gathering up all the money a property is expected to make, and then zapping it back to the present to see what it's all worth in today's pesos. Pretty cool, right?
And this time machine, it runs on 3 core ingredients. First, you've got to predict the future cash flows. That's the fuel. Second, you need to pick something called a discount rate, which is how we'll account for time and risk. And third, you decide how long you're going to hold the property and what you'll sell it for at the end. We're going to break down every single one.
Okay, let's get into the first and maybe the most intuitive ingredient, predicting all the money a property is going to make, year after year. We always start in a perfect world, with what's called potential gross income, or PGI. This is the absolute best-case scenario. It's the total amount of cash the property could rake in if every last square foot was rented out, every parking space was full, 24/7. It's our fantasy number, our ceiling.
But, reality bites. So the very first thing we do is get real by subtracting something for vacancy and collection loss. This is where we account for the inevitable empty offices, the time it takes to find new tenants, or even just rent that people don't pay. And this isn't just a wild guess, it's based on how similar buildings in the same area are actually performing.
This whole process creates what you can think of as a cash flow funnel. You start at the top with that huge number, potential gross income. Then you subtract vacancy, and that gives you your more realistic, effective gross income. From there, you subtract all the costs of just keeping the lights on, things like taxes, insurance, security, and maintenance. What's left at the bottom is the net operating income, or NOI. That number is the real measure of the property's earning power.
But hold on, we're not quite there yet. To get to the final net cash flow that we'll plug into our formula, appraisers have to subtract those big, chunky, irregular costs. I'm talking about things like renovating a space for a brand new tenant, paying the commissions to brokers, and setting money aside for huge future expenses like a new roof or a whole new elevator system.
Okay, now for what is easily the trickiest, most abstract part of the whole recipe. We've got our future cash projected, but how do we pull it back to today? Well, this is all about putting a price on time and risk. The entire theory of discounted cash flow hangs on this one simple, powerful idea. A peso in your pocket right now is more valuable than a promise of a peso a year from now. But why is that? Well, a couple of reasons. First, you could take that peso today and invest it, right? So it could start earning you more money immediately. Second, the future is just uncertain. Who knows if you'll actually get that peso you were promised? And for real estate, you've got tons of specific risks. What if the market tanks? What if your biggest, most important tenant goes out of business? All of that anxiety gets bundled up and priced into the discount rate. Think of it like this. It's a simple rule. The riskier an investment seems, the higher a discount rate investors are going to demand to make it worth their while. And that higher discount rate acts like a bigger penalty on those future earnings, which pushes their value in today's money down. It's like a seesaw. As risk goes up, present value goes down. All right, we have our cash forecast, we have our price for risk. Now it's the moment of truth. Let's put these ingredients together and see how they cook up a final value. So first, an appraiser will set a holding period. This is usually something like 5 or 10 years that they'll project the cash flows for. Then they have to estimate the reversion, and that's really just a fancy term for the price they think they can sell the property for at the very end of that holding period.
And here is where you really see the magic happen. Look at how each year's future cash flow is shrunk down to find its value today. The cash from year 1 gets a little haircut, right? But the money from way out in year 5 and that huge final sale price gets discounted over and over again, which means it's worth a lot less in present value terms.
And then the final step is beautiful in its simplicity. You just add it all up. You take the present value of each year's cash flow plus the present value of that final sale, and boom, the grand total is the indicated value of the property today, all according to our DCF analysis.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. Now that we know how this thing works, when would you actually pull out this powerful but pretty complicated crystal ball?
The whole key is using the right tool for the right job. DCF is absolutely perfect for those properties with a bumpy, uneven future, where you really need to model all the ups and downs year by year. But for a nice, boring, stable property, like, say, a building with one super reliable tenant on a very long lease, you can often get away with that simpler method, direct capitalization, which just assumes the income is going to stay steady.
And that really brings us to the most fascinating thing about all of this. A DCF analysis spits out this incredibly precise number, down to the last peso. But remember, that number is built entirely on a foundation of assumptions. It's a story someone is telling about the future of rents and vacancies and risk. So the question I want to leave you with is this. In the complex world of property valuation, where does the clean science of the formula end? And where does the subjective art of storytelling begin?